Have you ever been caught in a situation so awkward and wrong that you felt like the bad guy even when you did absolutely nothing wrong? I know, it sounds dramatic, but let me tell you, this story, it's exactly that. And trust me, if it hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't have believed it either. So, a little bit about me first. I'm 23 years old, a pretty normal person just trying to figure out life like everyone else. I live in a small apartment, work a basic office job, and spend most of my free time with my sister Hannah. She's 26, and honestly, she's not just my sister, she's my best friend. We've been through everything together, and I'd do anything for her. Now, Hannah's the kind of person who lights up a room. She's funny, confident, and just so good-hearted. So, when she started dating Jake 3 years ago, everyone thought they were perfect for each other. Jake had this way of charming people, always smiling, super polite, cracking jokes that made even my parents like him. And honestly, I thought he was okay too. But then again, I only saw the Jake he wanted people to see. Everything changed a couple of months ago when Hannah and Jake broke up. And not just any breakup, it was bad. Jake dumped her out of nowhere. And the worst part? He did it over the phone. No explanation, no closure, just, I think we're done. I remember sitting with Hannah that night while she cried her eyes out on my couch. She kept saying, "I don't understand what I did wrong. I thought we were happy." It broke my heart, seeing my strong, confident sister like that. It made me want to track Jake down and give him a piece of my mind. But I didn't, because I figured he was out of our lives for good. Or so I thought. To really understand how things got so messy, you need to know a little more about Hannah and Jake's relationship. On the outside, it looked perfect. They met at a mutual friend's party, and from the first moment, it was like something out of a rom-com. Jake had this effortless charm. He was funny, outgoing, and always knew the right thing to say. He made Hannah laugh, and honestly, that was all it took for her to fall for him. For 3 years, they seemed happy. Jake would take her on these surprise weekend trips, write her these sweet little notes, and do things like show up with coffee when she was having a tough day at work. To everyone, including me, Jake seemed like the dream boyfriend. But behind closed doors, it was a different story. Hannah would vent to me sometimes about how Jake could be selfish, like he always had to be the center of attention, and if things didn't go his way, he'd sulk or twist the situation to make her feel like she was overreacting. It was subtle at first. Little things like dismissing her ideas or making sarcastic comments when she was upset. It wasn't until their second year together that Hannah started to see the cracks. Jake never cheated on her, at least not that we know of, but he had a way of making her feel small. Like when she got promoted at work, instead of being proud of her, Jake said something like, "Guess I'll be dating the boss now. Better not get too bossy with me." Still, Hannah stuck it out, thinking maybe he just needed time to mature. But then, out of nowhere, he dumped her. Not even in person. He called her while she was at work. Can you imagine? She was sitting at her desk and her phone buzzed. She thought it was just a casual check-in, and then boom. He told her he didn't think they were right for each other anymore. No real explanation, no chance to talk it through. Just, "I think this is for the best." After the breakup, Hannah was a wreck. She spent weeks crying, replaying every moment of their relationship, wondering what she did wrong. I did my best to be there for her, but it wasn't easy. Seeing her like that was hard enough, but what made it worse was that Jake didn't seem to care. He didn't reach out to her, didn't even text to see if she was okay. It was like he had just erased her from his life. And honestly, I hated him for it. I figured he was gone for good, and I couldn't have been happier about it. But of course, life doesn't work that way. Just when I thought Jake was out of the picture, he decided to make things even more complicated. And that's when this whole mess really started. It all started a few weeks after the breakup. At first, it seemed innocent. Jake sent me a text. I remember looking at my phone and seeing his name pop up. My first thought was, why is he texting me? The message read, "Hey, hope you're doing well. Just wanted to check in. How's Hannah holding up?" I hesitated before replying. Part of me wanted to ignore him completely, but another part of me thought, maybe he's trying to apologize or make things right. So I gave a short, polite answer. She's struggling, but she'll get through it. Jake responded almost immediately. I figured. She's lucky to have you. You're such a great sister. At the time, it didn't seem too weird. Maybe he was just being nice, I thought. But then, over the next few days, he started texting me more often. It started with random small talk. How's work? Or, have you watched that new show on Netflix? I kept my answers short and neutral, hoping he'd get the hint. But then, one night, he sent a message that made my stomach drop. Honestly, I always thought you were the more interesting one in your family. I stared at my phone, feeling a mix of shock and confusion. Was he flirting with me? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I brushed it off and didn't reply. But something about it felt wrong. The next day I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe he was just being awkward. But then he texted again. I've always admired how independent and grounded you are. You're nothing like Hannah. That was when the red flags became impossible to ignore. Jake wasn't just checking in. He was crossing a line. I didn't know what to do. Should I tell Hannah? She was already so heartbroken, and I didn't want to make things worse for her. I decided to ignore Jake's text completely, hoping he'd get bored and leave me alone. But, of course, that's not what happened. Instead, Jake doubled down. A few days later, he sent me this long message about how he felt like we had this special connection and that he couldn't stop thinking about me. He said he made a mistake being with Hannah because, deep down, I think it was always supposed to be you. I felt sick reading it. I couldn't believe the audacity. This was the same guy who had broken my sister's heart without a second thought, and now he was trying to win me over. I texted back, short and to the point, Jake, this is completely inappropriate. Don't contact me again. Then I blocked his number, hoping that would be the end of it. But Jake wasn't done, not even close. Blocking Jake didn't solve the problem. It only seemed to encourage him. A few days after I blocked his number, I got a notification on Instagram. Jake had sent me a direct message from a new account. The message read, I know you blocked my number, but I need to say this. I can't stop thinking about you. I know it's wrong, but I feel like I finally realised what I want. And it's you. I didn't respond. I blocked that account too. But then came the flowers. One afternoon, I came home from work and found a bouquet of roses sitting outside my apartment door. At first, I thought they were from someone else, maybe a secret admirer or just a mix-up. But then I saw the note tucked into the flowers. It said, you deserve someone who truly sees you. I hope you'll give me a chance. Jake. I was furious. Furious that he had the audacity to do this, and furious that he somehow found my address. I threw the flowers in the trash, ripped up the note, and tried to push it out of my mind. But the next day, another bouquet arrived. This time, it was lilies, and the note said, I won't give up on us. Please let me prove how much I care about you. I felt trapped. This wasn't just annoying anymore. It was getting creepy. I called my best friend Sarah and told her everything. She was just as horrified as I was. You need to tell Hannah, she said. But I hesitated. Hannah was still in such a fragile state, and the last thing I wanted was to dump this on her. How do you even say something like that to your sister? Hey, by the way, your ex is sending me love notes now. Instead, I decided to handle it on my own. I texted Jake from a different number and told him to back off, or I'd go to the police. I thought that would scare him enough to stop. It didn't. About a week later, Jake showed up at my apartment unannounced. I was sitting on my couch watching TV when I heard a knock at the door. When I looked through the peephole and saw him standing there, my heart sank. I opened the door just enough to glare at him. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice low and firm. He looked at me with this pitiful expression, like he was some lovesick teenager. I just want to talk, he said. Please, give me 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let him in. I wanted to get this over with once and for all. But as soon as he sat down on my couch, he started with the same nonsense. I know this is messy, but I can't help how I feel. I think we could be amazing together. You're everything I've ever wanted. I was livid. Do you even hear yourself, Jake? You broke my sister's heart, and now you think you can just move on to me. What kind of person does that? Jake tried to defend himself, saying things like, I didn't mean to hurt Hannah, and I just realised too late that I was with the wrong sister. I couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. Then came the final straw. He reached for my hand and said, Please, just give me a chance. I'll prove to you that I'm serious. That's when I lost it. Get out, Jake. Don't ever contact me again. If you show up here or send me one more message, I'll call the police. He looked stunned, like he didn't expect me to stand my ground. But before he could say anything else, I opened the door and pointed outside. Leave, now! He left, but not before giving me this sad, puppy dog look like I was the one breaking his heart. I slammed the door behind him and locked it, my hand shaking. Little did I know the worst part of the night was still to come, because right as I turned around, I heard another knock at the door. It wasn't Jake this time. It was Hannah. When I opened the door and saw Hannah standing there, I felt my stomach drop. Her face was pale and her eyes were red, like she had been crying. My heart started racing because I knew this wasn't going to be a casual visit. Hannah stepped inside without waiting for me to invite her. She crossed her arms, looking at me with an intensity I'd never seen before. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice shaking. I froze. Tell you what? I asked, even though I knew exactly what she meant. Don't play dumb, she snapped. Jake, he told me everything about the texts, the flowers, and how you've been talking to him behind my back. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My mind was spinning. Hannah, it's not what you think. I didn't encourage him. But she cut me off. Then, why didn't you tell me? She demanded. Do you know how humiliating it was to hear it from him? He made it sound like you've been leading him on this whole time. What? I said, my voice rising. That's not true. He's been harassing me, Hannah. I blocked him. I told him to stop. I even threatened to go to the police. She looked at me, her expression a mix of anger and disbelief. Then why didn't you come to me? Why did you keep it a secret? I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell her that I was trying to protect her, that I didn't want to make her heartbreak worse. But in that moment, it didn't matter. All she saw was betrayal. Do you have any idea how this makes me feel? She continued, her voice cracking. He was the love of my life, and now he's telling me he wants to be with my own sister. And you... She stopped, shaking her head like she couldn't even finish the sentence. Hannah, I swear, I never wanted this, I said, my voice breaking. I was just trying to protect you. I didn't want to hurt you more than he already has. But she wasn't listening. She grabbed her bag and turned toward the door. You should have told me, she said quietly, her back to me. Now I don't know who to trust anymore. And then she left. I stood there in the silence, replaying everything in my head. I wanted to run after her, to explain myself better, but I knew it wouldn't help. She was hurt, and no amount of words could fix it in that moment. But as I sat on the couch trying to figure out what to do next, my phone buzzed. It was a new message from an unknown number. You can't avoid me forever. I meant what I said. I'll wait for you. It was Jake. Again. I stared at the screen, my anger boiling over. That was it. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me or Hannah any longer. It was time to end this once and for all. I grabbed my phone, opened up a new message, and started typing. But this time, it wasn't to Jake. It was to Hannah. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But please, let me show you the messages. Let me prove that I've been trying to stop him. You're my sister, and I need you to know the truth. Then, I hit send and waited, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up for myself and for my sister. It took a few hours for Hannah to reply. Every second felt like an eternity. When her text finally came, it was short, but gave me hope. Fine, show me everything. We agreed to meet the next day at a coffee shop. I spent the entire night gathering every message, screenshotting every interaction, and piecing together the full timeline of Jake's behaviour. I didn't hold anything back. I needed her to see the truth. When we met, Hannah looked tired and guarded. She didn't say much at first, just sat across from me with her arms crossed, waiting for me to start. So I did. I laid it all out for her. The texts, the flowers, the Instagram messages, even the time he showed up at my apartment. I showed her the screenshots of me telling him to stop and the blocked accounts. I explained how I had kept it from her because I didn't want to hurt her, but in the end, that only made things worse. As she scrolled through the messages, her expression shifted. The anger melted into confusion, then disbelief, and finally, heartbreak. She put down my phone and stared at the table for a long moment. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I should have believed you." "It's okay," I said, my voice soft. "I should have told you from the beginning. I was just scared of making things worse." She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "He really is the worst, isn't he?" We both let out a nervous laugh, the tension finally breaking. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had my sister back. After that, Hannah blocked Jake on everything and made it clear she wanted nothing to do with him ever again. I did the same. We promised each other that if he ever tried to contact either of us again, we'd handle it together. Jake did try one more time. He sent Hannah a long, dramatic email, blaming me for turning her against him. She didn't even bother reading the whole thing before deleting it. In the end, we came out of it stronger. The whole ordeal was awful, but it reminded us of what really mattered, our bond as sisters. No guy, no matter how manipulative or charming, could ever come between us. Hannah even joked about it later, saying, "Honestly, Jake trying to trade up to you was probably the best thing he ever did for me. Now I know what a bullet I dodged." And she was right. Jake may have caused a lot of pain, but he didn't win. We did.